Hi, welcome everyone. If you're one of the students joining the class, I can see you entering the Zoom room from the participants list that's going up right there. Please sign in your name to the chat, and then if you have a question for June, you can go ahead and put that in the chat as well. We will be getting to questions at the end, so that if you have any questions for her, she'll have a chance to answer you directly toward the end. I just want to take a moment to thank June.Edmonds for being here today. I'm going to read a little bit from her Wikipedia page. June.Edmonds is an American painter, teaching artist, and public artist. Edmonds' work is notable for its colorful layered surfaces that draw meditative practices to explore the relationships between color, repetition, spiritual contemplation, the power of archetypal systems, and interpersonal connection. She's an active and prominent contributor in the California area. She's had shows most recently at Luis de Jesus Gallery, the California African American Museum, the Huntington Beach Art Center, and the Watts Towers Art Center. We're so happy and excited to have you here today. I'm a big fan of your work. I just want to welcome you as a speaker in our Teaching and Socially Engaged Artist Series here at Cal State Fullerton that's been graciously sponsored by Grand Central Arts Center, as well as the College of the Arts and the Association of Historic Curators. We're so happy to have you here today. Welcome, June.
Thank you, Mariana. It's a very honor to be here. Very much an honor to be here. So I could share my screen and show some images. Okay, so share screen. Okay. All right. So this right here is some early work. Actually from college. So the date is 1982. I was in undergrad at the time. And when I was in college, I was interested in painting people, friends, basically in interiors, and just interested in involving still life and landscape in the works of art as well. So this one really shows everything that I was interested in. Okay, this next one, about a decade later, I right after school, I went to grad school at Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. I went to Skowhegan as well, and that was a great experience. Came back to LA and, practice doing art, still doing figurative works. And I was living in Long Beach. I was working at LA Times, and I heard that there were these MTA stations that were in Long Beach that were looking for artists. And one of the stations was like a block and a half away from my house. And I felt that that particular station should be mine. I felt like I was the closest artist there. And so I worked really hard on my proposal for it. I, at that time, lived down the street from a library, so went to a library and got a video that I watched about 20 times about how to get a grant, because I knew I was pretty new and up against, many experienced people. One of the recommendations was to, make sure that there were some very experienced people around you that you were working with. So I was able to do that. The mosaicist, her name was Monica Sharp. She had done some wonderful commissions, and I worked with Peter Carlson, who is a fabricator, and he's worked with, just about everybody and's been in the business for a long time. And so I was able to get the commission, with that team. So that was an honor. This is a public artwork that is up right now, on Pacific Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets in Long Beach. So I've done a few public art, works of public art, and did those around the 90s, and into the 2000s as well. So, about 10 years later, I got into abstraction. And I I was always interested in abstraction and, you know, being very painterly in my artwork and interested in texture and the brushstroke and things like that. And, you know, color was always sort of forefront for me. And so abstraction just seemed like a natural progression, you know, where I could just really focus on those things. So I started this series around this time, but maybe around 2011, you know, I got very serious, you know, about building this body of work. In 2017, you know, I got a grant with the city. I got the COLA uh, fellowship, which is the City of LA Artist Fellowship. And with that fellowship, you get a grant for $10,000, and that was wonderful. So again, that was just a few years ago, but it was the first time, you know, that, you know, I had this money that I could invest in my practice. So running out of paint was no longer stressful, you know, a new experience. And then I had money where I could get myself a studio. So it was the first time I was able to get a studio, you know, so just a few years ago, I got a studio at Angel's Gate, which is here in San Pedro. I'm in San Pedro. Let's see. And then at that show, I showed work of art that was very different. And there were these flags. And with the show at Install, which was the COLA show, you know, I decided that I wanted to use sort of a palette of primary color and primary color that went to skin tones. And so in the flag, I wanted to use the same palette, but instead of red, white, and blue, you know, I decided to use red, yellow, and blue, which are the primary colors. And we know that the primary colors make every other color in the rainbow. And I thought that there was something very similar about that with, you know, these brown tones, which represent brown skin tones, because, you know, since we know that life started in Africa, that all skin tones really come from these brown skin tones. So, you know, I was making that that comparison with these flags as well. So this is one of the later ones, you know, that I did this year, this one and this one. And this is sort of the range of darkness that these particular flags have. And I also did some drape flags. Sort of the original idea was sort of based off of these black drape flags that you know, I saw in a dream. And I was in a show at the beginning of the year at Jill Moniz place Quotidian, and she arranged the flags a little bit different. So I like the way that she arranged these and sort of consider this to be a collaboration, if you will. And at one point, you know, about maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you know, I knew I wanted to teach in college. I had been trying to teach on the college level, you know, since I got out of school in 1984. But, you know, the jobs were really limited and they weren't hiring Black people that much back then. You know, they don't hire Black people that much now, but hopefully that's changing. But, you know, I decided, let me hone my drawing skills. And so I did a series of portraits just to practice that. And, but maybe I did this one before 2005 because I did get one job, a couple jobs in college where I was teaching, drawing and design. And so this is some student work. So, I talked to your professor, Zeal, and she wanted me to share some student work and that you all would be interested in that. This is student work from a college class at Cerritos College, and this is as well. I did teach dual enrollment classes at Jefferson High School, and so that was really great as well. I don't have any of that work, but I will show you something else that is related to working with those students. I left Cerritos when an arts organization that I work with offered a full-time job. And so, at that time, I was in my 40s and didn't have health insurance. So I went on and took that job. So these are some of the works that of projects that I did with these elementary school students. So these students and this artwork that we're looking at now is basically K through 5. This artwork was inspired by the artist Juan Miro, and the student Derek. His artwork was chosen to benefit the art organization, like a benefit that they were doing to sort of grace the cover of their brochure. So he was very proud of that. Other projects that I have done, what inspires the projects that I do are artwork that I really love and that inspire me, and hopefully I think sort of translates, for the to the younger audience. So Barnett Honeywood is an artist that was in LA, born in 1950. We lost her very young in 2010, and she is known for doing these profiles. This is a shot of my classroom, or a little snippet of it. And I wanted to show these snippets. I couldn't find any pictures of the whole classroom, just to show that I find it to be important to just sort of surround the child with art, because they would be inspired by the same thing that we're inspired by, which is other art, And so there's some Barnett Honeywood artwork here. You'll see a Matisse here, and of course a Frida Kahlo here. So the lesson was to have the children draw themselves in profile, and to add the West African Adinkra symbol. So they were to choose their own Adinkra symbol that they felt represented them. Okay, so this is another project. This one was, most of these are from last year or the year before. There's an artist by the name of Anna Serrano, and Anna Serrano, she's from LA as well. So the old art standards, for 4th grade is, to learn about California artists as well. So Barnett Honeywood would have been one. Those were 3rd graders in that last picture, but this is, I did something else. This is also 2nd or 3rd graders, to tell you the truth, but with, I sort of keep in mind to bring in California artists and Los Angeles artists as much as I can. And Anna Serrano was one. She's in Washington, and Oregon right now, but she is from here. And so she did a project, she did a work of art called Cartonlandia, that is this wonderful neighborhood of cardboard houses sort of stacked up on each other. And, again, very kid friendly. And so we created these, and they're very creative. You see, the kids are personalizing it. This is a cat house. You can't really see the door, where the door has cat ears, but there's a cat toy and cat portrait and a goldfish, I guess, to entertain the cat. But the kids were encouraged to be very creative in every step. It's like design your own roof, design your own windows, design your own door. And so that's why you see sort of different shapes for each part or feature of the house. Okay. Another project was something inspired by an artist by the name of Heather Hansen. And she was an artist that uses her whole body to do art. And, I chose her because, she was just so interesting to look at, I thought, and would be from a child's point of view. Like she got her initial inspiration. She's a dancer, and she went to the beach, and she was laying down on the beach, sort of making sort of these angels, if you will, and ended up, sort of turning that into a drawing practice where she would have charcoal in each hand and sort of draw symmetrically as she was doing these movements at the same time. So the idea of that seemed very kid friendly. And so what I had the students do here was sit across from each other. So this is a collaboration, and sort of draw with both hands at the same time, but also mirror the person sitting across from them. And so they made collaborative projects like these. Another artist that I chose, who is a LA artist, Heather Hansen is not, the artist that inspired these. This work right here, this is a 5th grade work. This is 1st grade. The artist's name is Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is here in LA. He happens to be a teacher as well, a 3rd grade teacher. So a teacher that's working full time, but a very prolific artist at the same time. And his artwork has all kinds of interesting contexts. I found it to be kid friendly. I love the work. So for the younger artists, what I loved about his work is that he's a Latinx artist. I love that he was celebrating sort of the brown skins of that culture. A lot of times when you're working with young kids, you have to deal with them wanting to draw themselves blue eyes. You have to worry about making themselves skin tone, So they learn that stuff so early. And, it really is your job to not encourage that, and to just, not, just tear down sort of the white supremacists, canon that exists for them as well. So, so we pretty much focused on that, the skin tones and making design in the background, for these 1st graders. And this is a project that actually I did with a program with Daryl King. And Daryl King was working at my art organization in a program that goes into different schools and places artists in the schools to work with teachers and work with their curriculum for about 8 weeks. So I really enjoyed doing that. And so this was there was a number of fifth grade classes that I worked with. And the curriculum was social studies. So I thought Jose Ramirez would have been perfect and was perfect for the social studies unit they were on, which was civil rights. So Jose Ramirez has a number of works. He was a teacher, so he was on strike a couple years ago. So he has a number of works. You know, go to his website, joseramirez.com. He has a number of works that that have the strikes with the teachers as subject matter. And so there were teachers and students that were holding these signs. And so with the class, we just sort of went through the signs and what they were saying, and had the students write down, you know, in their art, you know, something that they believe strongly about that was pertaining to school. So you'll see that in these individual pieces. Here's a couple of these projects up close. You see they included the body as well. So I would start sort of like with the bottom statement here for his, where he says, use money on schools, not prisons. And this one, you know, is anti-drug message. Okay. This is another shot of another project, a project inspired by an artist duo by the name of Chowza. And it's paper mache. So, you know, I kind of swore off paper mache for many, many years, but I love this project so much. You know, I started doing paper mache with the kids again. So this was from a year ago. And also, you know, there's a shot of my classroom, and one of the things that is very important to me is that every student feels welcome in the classroom. So this here is the Jose Ramirez artwork, you know, and this one is the Anna Serrano. This one right here is Heather Heyer. This is another Anna Serrano. I don't remember the name of this artist. You know, we did some brushwork right here. And this one is Micheline Thomas. So I love it when I see the kids sort of coming to class or leaving class and stopping and looking at the artwork and connecting to the artwork. So here's some more of the abstract paper mache sculptures. You know, these took a long time to do, but the kids, you know, really love these. This, you know, my background is in painting, but as a teacher, you know, you just learn different areas of art as you go along. So I understand that there are many of you guys that don't have an art background. And even with or without an art background, you can just learn what's interesting or learn what you think the students think is interesting as you go along. So one of my first jobs was at the Armory Center for the Arts, and they won't even give you a classroom until you work under somebody. Which was fine. You don't get paid that much, but it's fine. And one of the persons that I worked under, I'm going blank right now, but she was Mariel Stern was and is, she's still a teacher, and she's a fabulous ceramicist. So I didn't know anything about clay, but I learned about clay, and then I learned how to teach clay, working under her. So that, working with that other artist was invaluable. And clay is a child's favorite thing to do. If they see clay, they're excited. So it's something that the kids, my students that I had been working with in Lawndale, I have been in Lawndale for about 13 years now. They have come to expect it every year. So that K through 5 contract is through the arts organization, PS Arts, that I work with. And you hear some more of their beautiful pieces. So you'll see they're all different grades: second grade, third grade, fifth grade. They're all, this taller one right here would be from a fourth or fifth grader. So at the end of the year, a lot of years, we'll have an exhibition that spans the whole, many districts in the South Bay. So everybody gets a little space. So this is some artwork from my classes. I did some artwork inspired by African-American quilters, Rosie Lee Tompkins being one. I don't remember who the inspiration for these abstracts were. I have to think about it. Margaret Garcia, we looked at some landscapes from the Los Angeles artist Margaret Garcia for this series of trees right here. And here's some close-ups. This is a fifth grade project, and I think this was like a perfect fifth grade project. It hits so many standards, fourth and fifth grade. It hits the standards of teaching contrasting colors, of complementary colors, the standard of perspective, 1 point perspective. And, I just added a few other things in there, like creating space, because using perspective is a way of creating space, on a picture plane. So giving them a few more techniques of creating space, within a picture plane, like overlap and diminishing sizes and vertical placement and things like that. So I think that's this is the last one. And same project, fourth, fifth graders. So that's it. And I can take any questions that you might have.
Let's see. Let me read some. Thank you so much. Your student work is just stunning. It's really beautiful to look at.
Oh, cool.
Start with some student questions because those are always the most exciting. And then I have some from Zeal as well, who's here but not able to join us as a panelist. She's joining us in the participant audience. Unfortunately, we had a technical snafu, so I want to apologize to Zeal for that. So let's hear from some of the students. Let's see, Jocelyn Monge. Let's see, what is your teaching philosophy? Do you have a basic philosophy or approach in the classroom?
Yeah. I want the student to be able to see themselves in the art that I present. I want them to feel that whatever the project is, that it's doable. So it's basically those things. I started a drawing class, a dual enrollment drawing class with LACC a couple weeks ago. And, everything's online, and, I have this PowerPoint. And, just sort of the second thing that I had to say to them was, I'm using quite a few textbooks, what I'm considering a textbook. But what I found frustrating when I was in school was just how Eurocentric they were, and that in my classes there is just uh, uh, like Eurocentrism and white supremacist curriculum has no place in my classes. So I let them know, and every time they see, whatever level you are, the artwork I present is inclusive of all genius.
That's remarkable. I mean, your student work is so exciting. And I think your excitement about looking and describing the process is evident in their excitement about it, but also it shows sensitivity to what they want to see, and they see themselves reflected in the choices that you're making in terms of display. I mean, the names that you mentioned and that they're working people within their community, that's an awesome, it's really a great example for the students here. Let's see. This is from a student who's sounds like is one of the child and adolescent studies students. Let's see. How do kids typically respond to art assignments in a regular classroom? Will they goof off or do they take it seriously?
I didn't hear the first part of the question.
How do kids typically respond to an art assignment? And so this is from a multiple subject credential student. Do they goof off or do they take it seriously?
Okay, great question. With PS Arts, I don't have a teaching credential, and a lot of us don't have teaching credentials. That means the teacher needs to be in the classroom when I'm teaching. So 99% of the time, how the students respond is how the classroom teacher, whatever her attitude about art is, so if a teacher comes in and is excited about art, the kids will be as well. Kids are naturally excited about art anyway. I mean, the teachers sort of use art all the time as, you keep acting up, you guys aren't coming to art. They tell me this all the time. I know that it's wrong. Don't say that to the kids, but they know that the kids enjoy it for the most part. So if I'm teaching something and the kids are acting up, because kids are kids, I'm gonna question my project. It's like, okay, my project didn't get them. I want my projects to engage you as soon as you walk in, and that it didn't happen. So I'm gonna question what I am presenting, or, just sometimes you have kids that are having a hard time. They're having a hard time and they don't know how to tell you they're having a hard time. Or they're just, just be a few kids that struggle, So, it's just kind of up to you to sort of figure out, if you can, where you can bring them in, like how much scaffolding you have to do with the individual. Last year at a certain school, I had a kid that would just come in and just act up all the time, just come in, and that classroom was his stage. He didn't have a strong teacher, and so, my attitude was, well, if your teacher's not going to tell you, I'm going to tell you, and so I did want to establish that there was some authority in the room, number one. And then, so after a few weeks of that, I just started sitting with him just to figure out what, if there was a road in with him. And it did turn out that he had just zero confidence in art, and just the very basic skills that was needed to get started in the project. It was another third grade class. He just wasn't confident in. So, I had to scale it down. I had to scale it down. I had to scale it down. But eventually, he did get to work once it was scaled down to a level that he felt comfortable with, so as a teacher, it's about balance. Like a student like that could just take all your time, and you don't have time for the other students. So you have to really figure out, how much time, you can commit to sort of bringing, the other students in. You can't spend the whole class. You just want to find how you can frame something so they can just be engaged and independent.
I like the way you're talking about it as finding an in with that kid, because it is about building those relationships with kids.
Totally.
And when you figure out what it is that they're terrified of, and then all of their behavior that's blocking, right, that's trying to block the outside world, kind of goes away because they trust you with that. And it's amazing. It's one of those things that it's watching a really good teacher in the room do that is like watching somebody dance, because they know where to spend a little bit of time, and they know where they can fly by a little bit faster, but they're kind of always circulating around the room. But just your description of that is, I think, really was very eloquent, because you do have to divide your time, but you have to also really find the inroad with each individual kid. It's very powerful. This is an art question from Melissa Vasquez. How do you overcome artist block?
I get rid of that term, like artist block. I don't use that term at all. I know that I'm going to have some bad days in the studio, but the goal should be just be in the studio. So if you're in the studio, you might as well pick something up, right? And if you pick something up, you might as well do, so you're not going to do masterpieces all the time. You might go, a long time without doing something that you're happy about. But I would never consider that a block, and I would just consider that you working through something.
Great answer. Have you ever had a chance to work with special needs children? And if so, are there certain accommodations you usually use or incorporate when you're working with those kids?
Yes, I find working with special needs children difficult and rewarding all at once. It's difficult because every special needs class is different, so I've worked with many. They're different depending on the ability levels of the students, and they're different depending on the teacher. The teacher might be a helicopter teacher, and there's aides in the class, and it's hand over hand the whole time. You know what I mean? So if it's like hand over hand the whole time, and you get a lot of that, then I don't enjoy that, because I'm teaching the aide, I'm not teaching the student, so
can you explain hand over hand? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. That's
right. So what happens in these life skills classes is that part of teaching is, like, say I'm a student and I'm getting ready to write or getting ready to draw. Well, the aide will put their hand over the student's hand and help guide them in their writing or in their drawing, or, in their sculpture or anything like that, so I find that most special ed teachers, unfortunately, are product centered, where most art teachers are process centered.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to describe it, but it does make sense. And I think, what you're describing is that it's very frustrating when somebody immediately takes away the student's ability to make any movement that they can make, and instead it's almost like the aide is making the decision for the student about where the mark goes.
Right.
That makes sense if you're copying a letter. It doesn't make sense if you're trying to express yourself. So it is always
Right.
a delicate negotiation for those
It is
kids.
delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but many of the kids, you know, they seem to not be so cognitively present, and all they can do is sort of this same move. You know what I mean? A scribble move or whatever. So whenever there isn't that much training, for teaching art for special needs. And I've been teaching for a long time, since what, like 25 years? So I look for it and I can't find it. So I think that is telling, that's telling.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is true. There isn't a lot dedicated to it for sure in our curriculum, and it's a big that needs to be filled in. It's an excellent point. Let's see. This is an interesting question from Alondra Gutierrez, and it's about your funding for your classroom art materials, which it's always interesting to hear how teachers do this. Do you use your own money to provide art materials for your students, or are they expected to buy their own, or how does the school handle that?
Okay. Yeah. So it really depends on where you work. If of course you guys are in college, so you have to supply your own art supplies. For art, the nonprofit I'm with right now, we have a supply budget, and so they came up with some number where each kid, the budget is $5 or whatever for the year for a kid. And so it just really depends where you are, if you're with a museum, if you're with a nonprofit organization, an art center, they have different criteria for budget. But you're, as a contracted, I'm a teaching artist, as a contracted teaching artist, I'm not expected to use my own money to buy the supplies. So, I did something at Angels Gate a few months ago. I got reimbursed. I had to buy the supplies myself, but there was a stipend that included reimbursement of supplies.
Where do you get your creative abstract color ideas from?
They're just colors that I naturally love to work with, so I am working with a really light palette right now, and I just enjoy manipulating color and experimenting and learning about it. You're on mute, Mariana.
I got it. Thank you. I'm sorry. You talked a lot about establishing a classroom environment. So when kids walk in, they see beautiful artwork, they can pause in front of it, and that, it sounds like, and one of the students is asking about this, but how do you make certain decisions about that? Or are you inspired by, how do you go find work to be inspired by, to bring to the classroom? And how do you organize your space?
One of the questions that Zeal asks is related to this. And her question was, when do you plan your curriculum, or how do you plan your curriculum? So for the longest time, I would take a month out of the year and just sort of dedicate it to planning the curriculum. And that was always August, of course, before the beginning of the year. And so by the time I would step into the classroom, I knew all the artists that I was going to be covering, so when I was showing that Wowza, that's how you pronounce it, the Wowza paper mache sample, all of that artwork was artwork that I was covering. And the same with those Varnett Honeywood self-portraits. So in the classroom environment is another tool to use for classroom management. So when your visuals are organized like that, that communicates a certain thing to the students. You have your expectations and your routines and your consequences and that kind of thing on the wall as well. Your room is helping you to manage the class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great description of classroom management, because it is about creating a whole world around the kids. And that makes sense that the rules and the aesthetics all go together.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Who are some of your influences as an artist? And how old were you when you knew you wanted to be an artist? It's from Crystal Robles.
Okay. So there's so many influences. The early influences were Barnett Honeywood, Charles White, David Hockney, for these interiors, who else was I looking at? Romare Bearden, Jacob Lawrence, I love Giotto, and the Impressionists and post-Impressionists and Expressionists. I love the way that they use color. So those were my earliest inspirations. Like now, there's just so much. It's really too many to name. I bought in, Amy Sherrill. It's so easy to use her and talk about color and talk about agent. There's just so much, to talk about with her work. Abstractionist, Fred Bowling, and Margaret Thompson, not so well known abstractionist Black woman. So many, of course, Alma Thomas, so quite a few.
Awesome. This is a really great question. This is from Alondra Gutierrez. I'm very happy you included a lot of cultural diversity in your artwork and even having culturally responsive classrooms. Let's see, the walls and with different artists and cultural backgrounds. Considering cultural diversity, how do you go about covering controversial issues in your classes?
It really depends. It depends on the grade. It depends on the school. It depends on the class. So when I was doing sort of those self-portraits with the Ramirez, see, I don't know. I'm not versed on all the curriculum from K to 5. So one thing that I loved about teaching with the 5th grade teachers, I love their spirit, where they were coming from. I love their progressiveness. And they were teaching about, the civil rights movement in the 60s. So with that bit of information, I knew I could talk about anything, I could talk about very controversial issues because these teachers were so conscious that even if I wasn't presenting something, 5th grade ready, for those ears, that they would present with me to make some of that harder subject matter presentable. So if I'm working with younger students, I keep things very simple. And with older students, I will go out and say a little bit more, but it just helps to have the support of the teacher, and a lot of times you don't have it. Maybe the teacher is very nonchalant, what's the word, and very, just just kind of non-engaged. And so you're having that conversation by yourself. And so those conversations are just a little bit more difficult to have, and they're a little bit more difficult to continue on with the next week because, there was no reinforcement by the classroom teacher. But in the college class, that I'm teaching now, it's been a while since I've taught a college class. I feel like I let the students know who I was in the beginning. So, I feel like I can talk about anything.
That's awesome. So I know Zeal likes to end with this question, or this is a big question that she always asks is, can you tell us like a favorite memory in the classroom or a memorable event, something that happened that really stood out to you in all of your years of teaching?
Okay. I was mentioning that I taught a dual enrollment class, and this was at Jefferson High School. And, one year I had a huge class. It was huge to me. It was like 50 students in the beginning. And, we're just like in a regular class. There's no easels or anything like that. And I didn't think that it would work, but it ended up being, just one of my best experiences, that all the students were engaged and they were learning and doing great drawings. And we ended up having a sort of culminating exhibition at the Dunbar Hotel, which is right around the corner from Jefferson High School.
That's amazing. What a cool end of the exhibition to be in a beautiful space like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's and that's an interesting point. So like, at the end of the semester, that is something that, for our final assessment of the critique, how young do you, because I know we always do great displays for young kids, but taking the work into the community or showing it in a way that it's not normally looked at can be so influential. And then also just having critique with young people. Can you talk a little bit about display and some?
I would love to, like critique with young people. Like even with kindergartners, I'm just amazed at how in tune they are with visual communication. Like one time, this isn't a critique, but all the paintings were on the table in this kindergarten class. And there was this painting that was just out of this world. And all it was shapes and colors. But this painting was like, oh my God. And I knew I had that response, but, as an adult, you have that response, to a child's work, and you just assume, because of past experiences, you just assume it's only you. But every single time a child passed that particular piece, they were stunned and stopped and said something about this particular work of art. So that just never left me, that something so beautiful and so nonverbal could be such a beautiful communicator that amazing. Everybody understands.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing thought. Even to end on, I was wondering if there's anything that you didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about or share in either area, either teaching or art, or things you're thinking about in the studio right now.
Well, I think just when it comes to teaching art, and this might be a repetition, but just bring into class what you love and what you connect with, no matter what it is. And, one of the places that I get ideas, another one of Zeal's questions, is just going to museums or galleries. And as an art instructor, you start developing sort of a radar, if you will. If I go to a museum or art instructor, a fellow art instructor, then that's what our communication is. Oh, look at this, the kids will love it. you know, and so you just start uh, uh, building an affinity of artwork that you know you love, that you think the kids will love as well. So I just think that's the best place to start when constructing your curriculum.
Thank you so much. It's an amazing thought, an amazing idea. It's been such a pleasure to have you come and talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.